are something that, from my perspective, don't even exist. What are your thoughts, Jacob?
So first, let me start by saying that not only as a society, but particularly in the vegan movement, the animal rights movement, we need to stop worshiping at the altar of celebrity. We
Oh, they're just gonna let you down. They're just gonna let you down. Oh no. Oh no.
need to stop attaching our values and having these celebrities spearhead our movement because
Because I wanna be the new celebrity. This is how you do this guy's voice. You gotta sound like you trying to sound kinda street, but you also kinda trying to sound like you have an IQ greater than 65. Okay, so let me break this down for you. No such thing as an ex-vegan. Just say it, just say it. They were never really vegan. We know it's coming. We know it's coming. They did it wrong, they were never vegan.
I understand that they have a large audience that they can have a huge reach to. However, when they go back and start eating animals again, they send the same message to the audience that we were trying to reach in the first place. So now instead of us getting the true message conveyed as a vehicle of animal rights, they now see that veganism is not obtainable because of what their favorite celebrity said, who probably wasn't even really in it for the right intentions in the first place. But outside of that, I truly believe that there is no such thing as an ex-vegan. And in order to get to that point, we have to define what a vegan is and then what they're not. So obviously veganism is a ethical stance. It comes from morality. It is anti-animal abuse. It is the principle that animals should not be exploited, should not be commodified.
Let me read that. Let me redefine veganism for you. Let me just define it. Isn't it funny? They all have their own definition of what veganism is. They just get to make it up. You just get to make it up. What is veganism? I don't know. Whatever I say it is today. Whatever I freaking say it is. It's fine. They get so concerned with these vegans leaving. They get so upset when these vegans leave. Why is that? Why do they get so upset when they leave? They're coming up with these ways to preemptively kind of like social media audit other vegans. Remember that last video we watched where the guy said, and I think it's the same.
I'm not having any difficulty. Again, I'm bigger than you. I'm stronger than you.
Look, Hench, don't interrupt, dude. We know. Just listen for once. Now I lost my train of thought. I mean, they're preemptively trying to shame people who they think might leave veganism. And they're trying to set it up and frame their cult now to kind of make a bulwark, to kind of make a moat so that none of these ex-vegans can affect their movement again. None of them have really figured out what the magic words are to discredit all of the ex-vegans. But I guess they're on this whole thing now, I guess, of no, like you can't put anyone on a pedestal. They keep saying, you put him on a pedestal. John Venus. We were so nice to him, and we looked up to him too much. We gotta stop looking up to people because they're just gonna disappoint us. And it's a classic cult mentality when you look at Scientology and the kind of gang stalking that they do of ex-Scientology cults. They get pissed off. There's nothing that pisses off a cult leader more than losing control over the people, the members of the cult. And the cult dynamics on of veganism and on vegan YouTube, it works just like Jonestown. It works just like freaking Jonestown. It's, in a few years, the vegans, they're going to have them, they'll have Kool-Aid drinking rituals where you gotta show your willingness to sacrifice yourself for the animals. Right? And Vegan Gains even says this. Vegan Gains has even voiced that if you won't die for the animals, if you won't deteriorate and die and let yourself wither away and suffer and die for the animals, you're not really vegan. I mean, Jim Jones primed his cult with all sorts of strange rituals, one of them which was doing mock sacrifices. Mock human sacrifices. He would give them, he would call meetings, and he would give everybody a glass with some wine or some juice, in this inverted, blasphemous communion, demonic ritual. And then guess what he would do? They all drink the juice, and he tells them, you just drank poison. In an hour, you're all going to be dead. And then just sits back and watched. He would sit back and watch what the people in the audience would do, what his cult members would do when he told them, you're about to die. Now, some mothers would start freaking out and like, ah! Others were just stone cold dead. Dead-eyed stare, dead-eyed vegan-style stare. And eventually, that got a little bit darker than even that. But that's how he primed them, right? You get these vegans, they're going out there, they're doing mock human sacrifice, mock self-flagellation rituals, covering themselves with blood, doing human die-ins. It's insane. Here's a clip. I think this is, let's see. I think this is the clip I was looking for about Jonestown.
We call them together and ask them whether this movement was worth dying for.
I'm talking about planning your death for the victory of the...
So here's the future of veganism right here.
He would call them together and ask them whether this movement was worth dying for.
I'm talking about planning your death for the victory of the people, for socialism, for communism, for black liberation, for oppressed liberation.
He floats the idea. What about staging a suicide to get attention, to protest capitalism in support of socialism?
So these mind control cults, these freaking mind control cults, it's a science. It's a science. And these little sideshow demons like DXE, Joey Carbstrong, and all these idiots, Anonymous for the Voiceless, and PETA. They pick up on some of the techniques, and they're clever enough to latch onto some of them and use them for manipulation. But when you look at Jonestown, it was like this full-on immersion, fucking MK Ultra summer camp. He told them exactly what he was doing. He said, I expect you to die for this movement. And he would ritually have them perform their death.
He would call them together and ask them whether this movement was worth dying for.
I'm talking about planning your death for the victory of the people, for socialism, for communism, for black liberation.
For the animals, for animal liberation. And Vegan Gains even says, you should be ready to do that. Vegan Gains wouldn't die for these animals. Vegan Gains wouldn't die for anything. But they want you to be able to. They want the acolytes of their cult to be ready to. But they themselves aren't willing to do it.
Or killed unjustly, whether it be for food, clothing, entertainment, or regardless of what it is. So if you're an ex-vegan, then by definition, that means that you no longer share these ethical or moral standpoints and that you just don't care about what happens to animals. And I think that once you make the connection, you just don't turn back. You don't see it happen with any other injustice.
You don't see it happen with any other injustice. Here he goes. You don't be against child abuse and then suddenly, hey, I want to go abuse children. They always use this same rhetoric, and they get lists of their talking points from some of these well-funded organizations. Isn't that funny?
Where they have a strong stance against something, and then they flip-flop and become someone who speaks up against that movement that they once were a part of.
That happens all the time, dude. What are you talking about? That happens all the time. This is how delusional these people are. There's so many, look at like some of the goofy ass alt-light fake right-wing personalities, Blair White and shit like that, right? These SJW like trans people who suddenly, now I'm a based Republican now. Look at me. I got a red MAGA hat on. Right? You see this all the time. You see this all the time in all sorts of movements. People realize that they were wrong. No, in veganism, you're never allowed to change your mind. You're never allowed to change your mind in veganism. It's impossible. This is delusion.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with any other injustice, once you recognize that what you're participating in is wrong, for example, let's say you are abusing your child, once you recognize that is wrong, you have made that moral connection. There's no going back. No.
So here, let me give you guys, I know you vegans, you like examples. Let me give you an example. Say you believed in veganism because you wanted to reduce the suffering and the harm done to animals. And then you realize that more animals are going to die to feed you soy and corn. And then you realize that there's more deaths of small animals in the crop protection industry alone from you eating plant foods than if you were to just exclusively eat beef. Right? Say you realize some of these inadequacies of the vegan worldview. You realize some of the contradictions. Right? And then say you realize that a vegan diet is completely destroying your children's health, and their teeth started falling apart, like a lot of these vegans get woke up by their children experiencing negative health repercussions from this, right? And then you decide not to be vegan anymore and to warn other people that they're abusing their children by forcing their children to be on vegan diets, and they're going to turn them into decrepit, sickly, weak, frail-bodied, and addled-minded children. When they realize this, they say, okay, no, let's back up. Let's see where we went wrong here, and let's change our perspective. That's what happens all the time. Happens all the time. People change their mind. People realize they were wrong, and then they see why they were wrong, and they change.
Nobody would ever say, yeah, I recognized that child abuse is wrong for about 3 years, and then I eased back into it, just did a bit, now I do a bit here and there, just because it's something that I enjoy doing. And we need to be really clear on, I agree, what veganism is, because all these ex-vegans, they always come at it from a diet point of view. We just heard Miley Cyrus and Mike Tyson and every other celebrity, every other person when we talk to on the streets, whenever they say they're no longer vegan, they're always treating it like a diet. They're saying...
No, and that's another lie. You got people that were genuine activists and that saw how shitty the world of these full-time activists is, right? You got Tommy Kelly, who saw firsthand the weirdness of people like Joey Carbstrong, Earthling Ed, Henge Herbivore, who saw firsthand the weirdness and the funding mechanisms behind the SAVE movement, who saw firsthand the corruption at the soul of your stupid movement that you're riding the coattails of, kid. And I know you're blinded. Maybe you're seeing all this money's floating around. And, ooh, I might be able to become a millionaire. I might be able to get $1 million like AV or Joey Carbstrong. That's going to make it even harder. The more money that gets pumped into these activist groups, the harder it's going to be for these activists to actually see how stupid what they're doing is. Because they're going to be rewarded by it monetarily. They're rewarded by it in their ego. They're rewarded by it with the false feedback loops that they're given from the fake friends that they have on the internet, from the thumbs up. They're snorting like lines of coke. It becomes harder. They get hooked on this stuff.
Because of nutritional reasons, I had to go back to abusing animals. And I think it's really important that we don't perpetuate veganism as a diet, because oftentimes we can tie it in with plant-based eating, and that's something that I'm guilty of doing a lot. And I think we need to be very clear that a plant-based diet has nothing to do with veganism, because you can easily go back on a plant-based diet and you can justify it from a health point of view. You can say, hey, I was...
Okay. What is the definition of veganism? You guys can't even define it. And the very definition of veganism makes me a vegan. The official vegan society's definition of veganism makes me a vegan. As practicably as possible. As practicably as possible, I am a vegan. It's practicable for me to eat basically 0 vegan foods.
Doing a certain training program at the gym, I was cutting, but now I'm bulking and my body works better eating a little bit of animal products. I feel a little bit better. And we need to be really clear that veganism is not a diet that you do for a certain amount of time to get health results. And when you're not getting those results, you go back. And I think we should really tie in that imperative that no matter your ability to plan a diet, that does not justify you to abuse animals. Just because you can't properly plan a diet, you don't have the right to cut the throats open of animals.
Yeah, I mean, we all have a responsibility to ourselves as individuals to take care of ourselves. And the fact that people can't seem to form an informed relationship with their food, like you said, is not a justification to cut an animal's head off for a sandwich. But even past that, so a lot of these quote unquote ex-vegans will use
quote unquote. Oh, you hear that? Quote unquote.
Lifestyle didn't work for me out, which to me is just an easy get out of jail free card so that they make themselves the victim. And people think that they're just suffering beyond belief and they're so victimized and they needed to just get those magical meats back in their life. When the real victims, the only victims, are the animals who are being forced into slaughter. So outside of that, even though their reasoning is usually absolutely ludicrous, it makes no sense if you know anything about nutrition or lifestyle.
Know anything about anything. You know that they don't know anything about anything because we know everything about everything and they know nothing about nothing. If you agree with me, then you know everything on anything. If you disagree with me, you don't know nothing about nothing.
But let's put that logic anywhere else. Let's hypothetically say standard North American dieters, right? A large majority of them are overweight, are sick, are dropping like flies. They don't feel good. They're, depressed, whatever.
Someone says, did he just compare children with animals? Yes, that's what they're always doing. They always want to act like children and crickets and chickens are the same thing. If your child is just an animal. We're going to give animals the same rights as your child. That's what these people want.
Might be. How come you don't hear them saying, well, I'm an ex-omnivore or I'm an ex-standard North American dieter because my health is failing on the lifestyle that I chose?
Yeah, that happens all the time. That happens all the time. People's health is failing and they search for other options other than the standard medical interventions that you get from Big Pharma. And they come upon dietary interventions like ketogenic diets, paleo, carnivore. And they find communities of people who are actually exploring these things and doing legitimate inquiry, right? Engaged in the legitimate scientific process, not like these ideologues that just repeat shit. Like your boy, Dr. Greger.
Right? There's an astronomical number of people whose health are failing them because of the lifestyle they live. How come they're not making a change and attaching it to what they've been eating or how they've been living? It seems to only come when you start to be a vegan or eat this plant-based lifestyle that all of a sudden you're just starving to death and you're nutrient deficient and you're feeling...
This dude is so... You're right. Crispy Johnson says he's as boring as those annoying vegans. He's quite boring. Quite boring. Freaking vegan street activist. He's from the streets, though. He's urban.
Is that veganism is unrealistic, that it makes no sense, and that animals should have their heads cut off. And that, to me, is moving backwards.
Animals are food. Is this a high school podcast project? Yeah, this is cute. You guys are doing a great job at your for your, I don't know, what do you call it, AV class? Call it AV club back in the day.